Welcome to Starting a Business Simplified. I have special guest Cheri Andrews with me. She's a small business and trademark attorney, and she's turning the traditional legal model on its head. Cheri uses a flat rate and membership pricing model to take the fear out of legal fees. In this episode, we are going to cover some of the basics that you need to know as a small business owner. We're going to share resources that you can use to help better educate you around what is required from a legal standpoint. Take a look at the show notes at the end of this episode for a free download of Smooth Sailing Business Checklist. Cheri is the author of Smooth Sailing, a practical guide to legally protecting your business. She shares her expertise and guidance in the areas of business formation, contracts, compliance, copyrights, and trademarks. Cheri primarily works with heart centered female business owners to ensure that their business is legally compliant and protected. Her favorite clients are service based businesses putting their own version of good out into the world. I had such a good time chatting with Cheri, and I know you're going to gain so much knowledge and resources out of this episode. So let's get right to it. Welcome to Starting a Business Simplified, Navigating the Shift, a podcast for those of you looking to transition from a medical career to starting an online business. I will be sharing how to get started, success stories, and more. If you are looking to make the move from medicine to online, but don't know where to start, this is the podcast for you. I'm Suzy Rains, your host, and I look forward to helping you simplify starting a business. Hi, Cheri. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy that you're here.
Hi, Suzy. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So, I introduced you earlier. Before we get started and jump in, I would just love for you to share with the audience a little bit about yourself and what brought you to doing your private practice. And if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit, and we'll talk more about it, a little bit about the book that you wrote.
Okay. So, how I got to the point where I am running my own legal practice, representing small business owners. I went to law school. I graduated. I did 16 years in law firm practice, working with a lot of type A guys, and just knowing I didn't fit into that world. At the end of that 16 years, one of my clients approached me and asked me if I would come work for them in-house as their general counsel. And I was like, hell yeah, sign me up. Like, when can I start? So I moved to corporate. I went in-house. I became a legal department of one, working for a company that I very much enjoyed working for, loved the people I worked with, loved everything I was doing. And that was great for 13 years. But then we went through a merger. After the merger, eventually my CEO left, a new CEO came in. Everybody knows the end of that story. So when I found myself like, okay, I don't have a job, I'm a little bit too young to retire, I'm too old to start over and learn something completely new. What do I have the skill set to do? And so I drew on all of the things I knew about running a business from having been in-house general counsel for 16 years, plus all of the things that I knew from all the side hustles that I ran during my legal career, because the law paid the bills, but it didn't fulfill me creatively. And I very much enjoyed doing things like craft shows. And I spent 8 years in direct sales in the scrapbooking industry. My husband and I had a booth at an antique mall. So, we've done those kind of things. We've run these small businesses on the side. And I understood at that point that small business owners were grossly underrepresented in the legal world, that so many of them were running their businesses with no clue and no understanding about the legal aspects of running a business. So I saw this need, and it was a need I knew that I could fill. And so I decided to start my own practice. And of course, that decision was made literally a matter of weeks before our county shut down for COVID. So Thankfully, I had set myself up as a virtual practice. I was able to meet my clients on Zoom. I was ready to go when COVID hit and the world shut down. So I've spent the last 3 years building this practice and finding out that I actually love what I'm doing now.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And what an amazing, I love the creativity side. So, a lot of people, when they think of attorney and legal, it's like, oh my goodness, boring, lots of reading, lots of research. How can this be? I love that you guys were doing craft stuff. That's so fun.
Yeah,
And what I love that you shared that is we all have more to us than the job that we hold. I'm doing air quotes, you guys can't see them. A lot of people that want to start their own business, they have a creative side because they're thinking outside the box. They're like, I don't want to be told what to do anymore. I don't want to do it somebody else's way. So I love that you shared that because that brings in that not only could you do a business, do your own practice as a legal person, but if you wanted to, you could go do something else. You don't have to just do legal.
exactly. And it also means that for my clients, I understand the creative mind and I understand what they're trying to do, building a business. And I've actually had clients tell me, you're the first person that I've talked to that gets it. And that's important. And, you had also asked about my book, which I forgot to
Yeah.
mention. So as I started building my practice, I was talking to people. And because we were in COVID and everything was on Zoom, I was networking with people across the country and finding that I was limited by my license in some areas of law. And I would talk to them and say, I can give you general information, I can educate you, but I can't actually do the legal work for you. You need somebody in your state. And it was frustrating to me. So, my book, Smooth Sailing, A Practical Guide to Legally Protecting Your Business, actually came out of that frustration as a way to reach small business owners across the United States with information that they need at a very, very affordable price. So the book is really like a desk reference kind of thing where I go through business formation, contracts, policies, a little bit on copyright and trademark and just say, here's the things as a small business owner you need to know, you need to be thinking about. And, it's not a how to book, there's no forms in it, there's no templates, but it gives you that base knowledge and understanding of all the things you should be looking at as a small business owner. And so you're not going into it blind.
How you and I met. I love how you and I met. I had a client who was asking me legal questions. And I was like, okay, we need to research an attorney in your area because you need to talk to an attorney in your area. So her and I, we split the job of looking. And I went out to LinkedIn and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna search for attorneys that handle small business. Like I need to give her some references. And I found you. You and I connected. We didn't talk or anything, but we connected on LinkedIn and I saw your book. And I was like, "Ooh, I need to read the book." So I went ahead and I got the book and as soon as I started reading it, I said, "I need to talk to Cheri. She has to be on my podcast." For the listeners out there, Smooth Sailing, read it. I want all of you to read it if you're going to start a small business. Because when I started reading it, I was like, yes, this is what all of the small business owners, it's the information you need to know for where to start. And as you know, I do the business part starting, like starting the business. And I was reading your book and I saw your checklist and I went, she put business plan at the top of the checklist. And I was so happy. I was like, yes, yay, yay, yay. Because that's what I do. And you have to have all of these questions answered. All the legal stuff that you put in your book, business owners, when they're starting out, they need to ask those questions and they need to figure out how to do that in their business, in their location, so in their state. And that's the hardest thing that I would have people asking me questions about. And I'm like, I'm not an attorney. I can only give you the knowledge that I know. So for those of you listening and anybody that follows me, I am going to be recommending her book. Here, this is the beginning starting part. Read it. because it's so valuable. And then, of course, you and I connected in another networking group. So I was like, it's meant to be. We're meant to know each other. I know there's another piece of what you do, but outside of the book, you did decide to do something else to further educate and help small business owners. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your Wise Owl Academy?
I would be happy to share about Wise Owl Academy. So, Wise Owl Academy is an online learning platform that I created because, again, I wanted to share this information and make sure small business owners had the foundation of knowledge. But the online program also allowed me to go a step further and walk business owners through templates, through simple contracts, things like privacy policy and terms of use for their website, more information, more in depth information about business formation, all of those kind of things. And so I decided to create this online platform with the idea that I could then, for some people just don't like to read, which is fine. It's not for everybody. For people who prefer learning by watching videos, listening to audio, downloading worksheets, looking at, different things, this is a different way of presenting that information, but a way that also allows me to go much deeper. And with the Wise Owl Academy, the way it's set up, it's a membership. You sign up for a year, you get immediate access to what I call the core content. The core content goes through business formation and the things that you need to be looking for in deciding whether you want to be an LLC or a sole proprietor or a C corporation. We look at all of that. It goes through your team and making sure that you have representatives helping you out in the areas of legal, insurance, finances, and taxes. Those are the areas that could really bite you in the butt if you make a mistake. We talk a little bit about needing help in other areas and whether you should choose an employee or an independent contractor to fill in for things like, marketing or bookkeeping or just something that's not in your own skill set. We talk about the importance of contracts and why you want a contract to set clear expectations between you and the person you're working with and what needs to be included in a contract. We talk about policies, and that's everything from your website policies to employment stuff to document retention, whatever. We talk about copyright and trademark. And so all of those are talked about on a very high level in the core content, but then we get into monthly content. So every month I'm adding something new and I'm picking one very small topic and going in depth. And some of those that we've already covered. One of my favorite ones is AI. And because so many small business owners are now using AI in their content marketing, we talk about how to do that safely and how to be smart about using AI. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm saying just use it in a way that makes sense for your business. And I give best practices and things to watch out for. Another one we had recently was on disclaimers and the importance of disclaimers in certain types of businesses and what they need to say. So it's one small topic every month that we go a deeper dive into. A lot of these include checklists or templates or sample contracts, those kind of things. And once a month, we have office hours, which is a Zoom call where any member can come in and they can ask me any questions about anything that's in the material for that month, anything that's in the membership in its entirety, or any legal question they have that's outside of that. And, the only caveat that I have there is what I'm providing is knowledge and learning. It's not legal advice. And that, they'd still have to go back to an attorney in their own area if they need specific advice to their business. But it's proving to be a really great way of reaching additional small business owners and making sure they get that foundational knowledge. And I'm really enjoying it, and I'm getting ready for my next relaunch in September. So I'm excited about that.
Okay, it's knowledge and understanding. It's not legal advice. And what I love about that is I get those questions that what you just explained, a lot of the core stuff that you say, I get questions about that all the time. And I'm like, I'm not an attorney. I don't even know how to go general. Like, I mean, I could say what I know from my experience as a business owner, but beyond that, it's a beautiful place to educate yourself. So for the listeners out there that are like, I have no clue when it comes to legal, when it comes to my business legal stuff. When you educate yourself, then you know what to go ask an attorney. Like, oh, now I know I need a privacy policy on my website. It's expensive to have an attorney. And we all know that. When you have one and you have the knowledge, you can save time. So, okay, I know I need these contracts. Now I need to go take it to somebody. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but take it to my attorney that now can spend less time, less money because I gave them more information up front. So they're not doing a lot of the research stuff. They're not doing a lot of the busy work that we can do as business owners ahead of time and kind of prepare them and say, okay, I know these are the things that I need because we're now educated as a business owner. I love that.
And you're not paying an attorney their hourly rate of 300 or 600 or $800 to provide that education for you. You're not sitting in their office having them explain to you what a contract is and why you want one. You already know that, and you've come in not only with the I need a contract, but here's what I need it for, and here's what I need it to cover. I just need you to draft it.
Yeah, and
Um,
make sure it covers all of the legal stuff within
right.
the location that you're in. Yeah. This is what I found so valuable with the Wise Owl Academy when you and I were talking because you cover Pennsylvania and Maryland. That's your locations that you're licensed in.
Correct.
So I want to rewind a little bit because I'm in my business is in Washington. I'm virtual. So literally, like I can't hire you as my attorney for a lot of the things that you're not licensed in Washington for. But again, I can ask you questions in Wise Owl Academy. I can get educated. I can be that educated business owner and go to my Washington attorney and say, this is what I need. Now I know because I'm aware and I don't have to go to them and say, what do I need for my website? What do I need for my contracts? I'm not really sure. And then they spend, like you said, their hourly rate educating me. I want to rewind and let's go back to basics for a minute. For those listeners that are thinking, why do I even need this? We're going to go back to the why. I want to talk about what a liability is, what an asset is, and what's the purpose of like you mentioned with the AI when you said, we need to protect ourselves. A lot of people are like, I don't understand that. I want to just go to explaining what it is as a business owner that we really are protecting. If you want to just tell us that basics, like what is a liability, what's an asset, and why do we even do it?
Okay. So liability and asset actually are kind of financial terms, but from a legal perspective, liability is your potential of being asked to pay for someone else's damages. And from a very, very legal perspective, it's if someone sues you and they sue you because they didn't get what they thought they were getting out of your service or product, they thought you overcharged them for something, they bought your product and then had a problem with it or a bad reaction to it. There are so many areas where liability can come up. Financial, if they were harmed financially, physical, if there were any, like, let's say you're a physical fitness trainer and somebody gets injured while you're working with them, or you're selling beautiful candles and scented soaps and somebody has an allergic reaction to something. Those are examples of physical damage. There's mental, emotional, it kind of runs a spectrum. But when you think of the litigious world that we live in and the fact that anybody can sue you for anything at any time, what you're looking for with protection from liability is making sure that you have enough of the legal assets, and this is where we're going to talk about assets, in place to cover you in that event. Now, those assets, when I talk about legal assets, I'm talking about contracts and policies for the most part. So your contract is an agreement between you and the other party that you are selling products or services to that sets clear expectations between the two of you for what it is you are giving and what you're receiving. What service are they getting? How much money are they paying you? And then the contract goes further and it puts in a lot of legal protections. The legal protections cover everything from what you can and can't be held liable for, when they need to indemnify you, which is another legal term we won't go through right now, where what state's law will apply if the two of you end up in a dispute, and where they can and can't sue you. So, if I am in the state of Washington, I want to make sure that Washington law applies and that if somebody's going to sue me, they're going to sue me in my county in Washington. So that's one of the biggest protections that we put in there because, particularly for people who are virtual, we have clients all over the country or all over the globe. You do not want to have to defend against a lawsuit if you're in Washington, in New York State, or in the United Kingdom. Like you really don't want to
Yeah.
have to defend outside of your own jurisdiction. So we look at those kind of things. The other types of assets, your privacy policy, that makes you compliant with GDPR and all the other privacy laws out there. And again, sets clear expectations between you and the visitors to your website. Your terms of use on your website, those terms of use are 100% there to protect you. They are telling your website visitors what they can do and what they cannot do on your website so that if they're a bad actor and they come in and they're doing something, scraping information off your website, cyberbullying people, all of those kind of things, that you are protected. Other types of legal assets, when you start hiring employees, that offer letter that protects at will employment, the employee handbook that sets forth all of the different types of policies for what it's like to work in your organization, document retention, how long you keep things and when you get rid of them. There are just so many different assets that you could need as a small business owner. So we've just touched on a few of them, but those are the things that help you offset the liability, the potential that somebody's going to sue you. The other thing that's huge in offsetting the liability is how you set yourself up as a business. So if you're a sole proprietor or a partner without a legal entity, that means you are the business and you're 100% liable and everything you own is at risk. When you set up a business entity, whether it's an LLC or a C corporation, you create a separate legal entity that becomes responsible for the business obligations and the business lawsuits, and it provides personal liability protection for you as a human being instead of as business. So then your personal assets, your home, your 401k accounts, your bank, your cars, your whatever else you have that's valuable are no longer at risk for what you're doing in your business.
Now, and I want to clarify because I know a lot of people are like, well, if I do the LLC or the corporation, then I'm not touchable. And nah,
Mhm.
people can be privately sued. So it's not, it's not,
It Right.
yeah,
It doesn't mean you're untouchable. It does mean you need to make sure that you do it right and that you observe all the rules. So if you're setting up an LLC for LLC stands for limited liability company. And that limited liability, the whole point of it is to limit the liability to you as a human being, as opposed to you as a business owner. But you have to do some very specific things to make sure that that liability coverage stays in place. So you have to keep your finances completely separate. Your personal finances and your business finances do not commingle. You keep them in separate bank accounts, you pay them on separate credit cards. Everything has to be very clearly separated. You have to make sure that when you're contracting on behalf of the business, you're contracting as the sole member or member of your LLC and not you as an individual. So you have to really keep that separation between you, the human being, and you, the business, in order for that liability coverage to stay in place.
And that's something where and I cover this with my clients. I'm so happy that you're here and that you're sharing this information because I tell them all the time, that's one of the first things that I tell them is get it separate, even if you don't have a separate entity yet. So if you're going to be a sole proprietor in the beginning, but keep it separate and run everything separately so that when you do set up your entity, whatever you decide that to be, you're already in a good place to have that. The other thing is it's a tax thing and you're not a tax attorney thinking about when you set up an entity, you take into consideration the tax implications. Like there's different ways of how you do taxes based on what you're in. So it can be like a spider web of information, but it's just that making people aware that when you become a business owner, you have to think like a business owner. So you have to separate and really say, okay, my business is my business and my home is my home and keep those things separate.
And the IRS, if they ever decide to audit you, is going to look for that separation. And if you're buying materials or paying for, let's say your internet service or your website, whatever, out of personal funds, the IRS is going to look at that like, okay, that's not really a business, that's a hobby. And then suddenly everything that you've been taking as a deduction, they're going to say, nope, that's not a deduction. And you're going to suddenly owe a whole lot of money in taxes because you didn't keep those things separate. It's one of the things that they look at. And the interesting thing about all this too is for tax purposes, whether you're a sole proprietor or a single member LLC, your taxes are done exactly the same. It doesn't matter. The IRS considers a single member LLC as what they call a disregarded entity. So they don't care. All of the profits and losses of the business still pass through straight to you and are reported on a Schedule C either way.
Yeah. So I always and this is my recommendation. It's in my contracts, basically telling people I'm not legal or tax advice or financial information. Like you have to find somebody that knows what they're doing to help you again, the taxes, the financial stuff that you're doing, all the things that have the legalities that go with it. You need to have a professional that knows what they're doing. And if you're getting growing and expanding and getting bigger and bigger and you have more money that you're handling, I highly, highly, highly recommend getting a good CPA, tax attorney, all those things to make sure that you're following all of those laws that go around the money side. This is just the beginning. For those of you listening, you're probably, oh my goodness, what am I getting into? No, it's okay. That's why we're here. Wise Owl Academy. Come work with me. I'll get you, figured out with what you need foundationally. Sign up with Wise Owl Academy. You'll be educated. You'll understand. I wanna go over now that we've talked about all the things that are scary, like
But
we've talked about all
they don't have to
Yeah.
be scary. You just need someone, holding your hand and walking this journey with you. That's all.
Yes, exactly, and what I loved when you were talking about the protection side, what I was hearing, and it's my own brain that filters things this way. I was hearing communication. I was hearing contracts are setting expectations. If you're setting expectations in writing, so that's the key. Set your expectations in writing for anything that you're doing as a business, interacting with the public and your employees. So if you have employees, you're internally, you're fine. We just don't do like we don't think about it because we're not attorneys. We don't think about, oh, I need to put this communication I'm having in writing. So I'm going to give an example. If you're going to work with somebody outside of your organization, outside of your business, get it in writing. It's not a bad thing. I feel like there's this if I give somebody a contract and say, I need you to sign this because it sets our expectation, that people have kind of a negative, like, ooh, because then they immediately think, oh, what do you want to sue me? Like, no, we're setting expectations. Like,
Mm.
I'm just laying out the communication, like the conversation that we've had about this agreement that we talked about. It's just so that both of us know what to expect. And we make sure that we stay in our lane and we do what we said we were going to do and they do what they said they were going to do. And that's all it is. It's not a good, bad, or anything. Am I explaining that good? Because that's in my
Y
mind what I think of it as.
No, it's exactly right, Susie, that it is all about communication. And here's the thing. I know a lot of small business owners are hesitant to use contracts because they think, "Oh, that's gonna put off my client. They're not gonna wanna sign a contract. This is a simple deal, like, we don't need all that stuff." Actually, that's not true. For most of your clients, when you present them with a contract, as long as the contract is well written, it's specific to you and your business, and it's not like legal overkill, they will look at it and say, wow, this person takes their business seriously. And this contract really lays out for me what I'm getting and what I'm paying and what I can expect. I've had clients come back and tell me that when they've presented their contracts to clients, what they're hearing is, "Oh, you must be really legitimate. You're an actual business, right? Not just somebody doing this, thing on the side." So people look at that, for the most part, they respect it. If they don't and they balk about signing a contract, that's kind of a red flag that, like, if they're not willing to sign that, then what are they trying to get out of you that isn't in the contract? The other
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a protection for both parties. It's
It is.
protecting both sides, yeah.
And the other thing about using the contracts to set those clear expectations is you avoid upfront ending up with that client, and everybody knows the client I'm talking about, that expects more and more and more. And every time you think you're done, they come back and they want another change or they want another thing that wasn't in the original scope of what you agreed to. But the reason they can get away with it is, and for the most part, they're not bad people. They're not trying to take you for a ride. They didn't have the clear understanding of what was and was not included. And if you're very clear about that in your contract, they're not going to come back and ask you over and over for more and more and more. Or if they do, you can point to the contract and say, "I would be happy to do these other things for you. Here's the additional cost," because it wasn't within the scope.
Yeah,
Um, and those are the kind of things that it protects you, it makes it clear for them, it avoids that situation where you have that client that just sucks the life out of you because, they're
yeah,
constantly expecting more than what was included.
yeah, yeah, that's so good. Thank you for clarifying that. Because and it takes away the uncomfortable because you're
Mhm.
like, "We agreed. Here's what it says in writing." And there's no icky feelings because you're like, "This is what was in the contract. I'm happy to do more work for you. Here's my add-on charge that is in my pricing." And I'll get that amended to the contract, no problem. We'll add it to it and I'll take your credit card. Like, that's business. That's being a business owner. That's being responsible. And that's protecting the client as well. You're actually protecting them because if you do something that's not in the contract that they didn't agree to and something happens, not only are you liable, but it could be bad for them too because it
And
wasn't something
also,
talked about.
it protects them because you've said, "I'm doing this, this, and this for this amount of money." And if you only do half of it, they can go back to the contract and say, "But you gave me A, B, and C, but you didn't give me X, Y, and Z. So I don't owe you the full amount until you give me X, Y, and Z." So they're protected as well.
Yes. Yes, both and that's really what it is. I love that you were talking about contracts. This is a good topic. It kind of segues us into because really contracts are one of the biggest things that my clients that I see run into. I know that the other legal things with a business are very important and required, but I want to talk a little bit about jurisdiction, because that word might be unfamiliar to some people, and when they need to go find an attorney. Like, what are some things that you can recommend because of jurisdiction?
So jurisdiction really comes down to where. Where am I going to be sued? What law is going to apply? And if you're both in, and I'm going to, use where I'm at and what's familiar to me. So if my client and myself are located in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, and then jurisdiction and venue really don't become a big deal. We're both in Montgomery County. Clearly, it's going to be Montgomery County. It's the only thing that makes sense. The minute you get to a point where, even within, for me, the state of Pennsylvania, if I'm in Bucks County and my client's in Montgomery County, which courthouse are we going to when we have a dispute? And I'm going to prefer Bucks County and they're going to prefer Montgomery County. That's what we put into the contract, which one is going to apply. So that's really what jurisdiction and venue are about, is the where of where you're going to go to court in the event of a lawsuit. Where it becomes really important is if you end up with people in different states, because now you're not only dealing with the potential of, do we go to my state court or your state court, but do we go to federal court because we're coming from two different states? And, that's where the federal courts come in. So it's very important up front to be stating where this is going to happen. Otherwise, it defaults to, the laws of the states you're in, and it becomes a question for the court to decide who has jurisdiction, which means you're paying for a whole nother thing to be litigated, which makes no sense at all. And the other thing is, the minute you have to defend out of state, now your local business attorney who's been taking care of you since forever probably can't help you. And you're going to have to go hire an attorney in another state and, you know, pay them and their hourly rate. And that's just a situation you don't want to be in if you can avoid it. Now, I say if you can avoid it, the truth is businesses contract every day with companies outside of their own states. If you think about the tools you're currently using in your business, you may be using a domain hosting company that's not in your state. You may be using a calendaring product like Acuity or Calendly. You may be using Zoom, and none of them are in your state. And simply by signing up for those products, you've agreed to their terms of use and their contract. And if you had to sue them, guess what? It wouldn't be in your state. When you start bringing in contracts for your business, depending on who you're bringing in, they may have their own contract that specifies their state. And now you're looking at a balancing act between how bad do I want this contract? How bad do I need this client? Versus am I willing to take on the risk of having to defend in another state or, anything else that they've asked you to put into the contract. And that is just going in eyes wide open, understanding what risks you're taking on, what risks have been shifted to the other party. That's a lot of things that small business attorneys do. We help you interpret those contracts and understand what risks you're covered for and what risks you're taking on, so you can decide if the contract value is enough for you to take on those risks. And it happens every day. I mean, business owners are taking on risks all the time because that's the way business works.
It's not 100% avoidable. It's like you said, going into it eyes wide open and saying, okay, if this is the risk, if something were to happen and we had to go to court, I'm okay going to another state. I'm going to sign this knowing that.
Yes.
Or you can try to negotiate and say, can we do it in our state? And most of the time it's probably not going to work that way. But you can, from your own business, when you write your contracts, you can include it in your state. And then those people signing are taking on the risk that they may have to come to you. And that's
Right.
okay too. Yeah. Since we're talking about the attorney piece and having an attorney in your own state, before we close out, I would love to cover how to find an attorney and what that means. So, for example, you're Pennsylvania, Maryland, I'm Washington. So, like you and I, you wouldn't be my attorney for anything that's state regulated.
Right.
You could handle a federal because it's across states. Can you just explain that a little bit and what you recommend when someone's like, well, how do I find an attorney then?
Sure. So for business formation and for contracts, you need an attorney in your own state because those areas are covered by state law. And every state has its own nuances and its own take on things. So you want an attorney who actually understands the laws in your state. And for me, as an attorney who is licensed in Pennsylvania and Maryland, I set up LLCs in Pennsylvania all the time. I understand what they're looking for in an application. I understand the correct wording that gets it through quickly. I know that I don't know that for Washington. I've never been in the Washington application site. I wouldn't even begin to know. I could go in and poke around and probably figure it out, but that's not where I spend my time. So you want an attorney who that is where they spend their time and that they know it as well as I know Pennsylvania. The same with contracts. You want somebody who understands whatever weird nuances are in your state law. For things like copyright and trademark, those are based on federal law. So when you're talking about filing a trademark application, an attorney who does trademarks, I'm not saying any attorney because if you've never done a trademark, let me tell you, there's a huge learning curve. It is an art unto its own. An attorney who's experienced in filing trademarks can represent anyone across the United States. They do not need to be licensed in your state in order to help you out because it's federal law. So there's no state by state differences. That's the whole difference between what is covered by state law and what's covered by federal law. When you actually say, okay, I want a business attorney. Now I'm looking for somebody in my state, most likely. How do I go about finding this person? How do I know that, they're really going to do a good job for me? How do I figure this piece of this little puzzle of being a business owner out? So the way I look at it, finding an attorney is no different than finding a doctor or finding a spouse. When you're looking for that right person, there's some things you're going to do. You're going to ask friends and family and coworkers, like, hey, what doctor are you seeing for, like, I need a dermatologist. Who do you use and are they any good and do you like them? Um, it's the same thing with an attorney. I need a business attorney. Do you know any in this area? Are they any good? Do you like them? So after you've talked to your friends, your family, your coworkers, you maybe have some names, or maybe they've all kind of gone, I don't know. I don't really use a business attorney. Well, then there's, of course, Google, business attorneys near me. You bring up a list of people. Here's where you start digging in. So if you were going to date somebody, one of the things you're going to do is go look them up on social media, right? You're going to check them out. You're going to like, what do they post? Do I resonate with this stuff? Or are they just a weirdo, right? You can tell a lot about people by what you can find on their social media. When it comes to professionals, it, it really doesn't change. You can tell a lot about people by what's on their website and what's on their social media. So go ahead. If you think maybe this attorney's right for you, go ahead and stalk them a little bit. Check them.
Okay, I'm gonna interrupt. I stalked you on LinkedIn, and that's how I found your book. And when I read I was like, okay, she wrote a book, and it's resonating with me. And I'm like, okay, she's a person that I can connect with. Like, then I need
Right.
to investigate further. Let's have a conversation. Yeah, I love this. Keep going.
So you go ahead and you check them out on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, anywhere you can find them. You take a look at what they've put out there and you say, does this make sense to me? Does this resonate with me? and you go through the list of people that your friends and family gave you, the list of people that you found by doing a Google search, and you look at their websites, you look at their social media, you see what's out there, you see what feels good to you and what feels icky. You take the icky ones off the list, and now you've got the few that maybe feel good to you. The next step is you reach out, you make contact. If they offer a free initial consultation, take advantage of it because there's nothing like actually getting in front of a person and talking to them to let you get a feel for whether you would be comfortable with this person or not. If they don't offer a free initial consultation, if they charge, but there's somebody that's really high on your list that you think is a good contender, it may be worth a few $100s to have that initial consultation just to make sure. I have 5 C's that I look for and that I advise people to look for when they're hiring a professional. First off, credentials. Did they go to law school? Are they licensed in your state? The really basic stuff. Do they practice the kind of law that you need help with? The second thing is convenience. So, are they close to you? Do they make it easy to set up an appointment? How quickly can you get in with them? Or are they the kind where you called and you're not getting an answer, or you have to talk to the receptionist, then the receptionist sends you to the secretary, then the secretary takes a message and says the attorney will get back to you. And, a week later, they finally call you back. Like those are the kind of things you're looking at. How convenient do they make this for you? Okay. When you get in front of the attorney and you're talking to them, you're looking for how comfortable do I feel with this person? And this is something that's very subjective and very innate to you, but I think most of us know this person I'm vibing with, I get them, it feels good, or this person is making me feel a little uncomfortable. I think you're a little weird. I'm feeling a little queasy around you. Comfort, it's a thing. The other piece of that is compassion. Are they listening to you? Do you feel seen and heard by this attorney? Or do you just feel like they're just trying to get to what do you need? How much can I charge you? You're just a number that's going to be on their slate. And, for me, it's very, very important to me that my clients know that I see them, that I get them, that I understand them. And I think we all deserve, as small business owners, to have professionals in our corner that see us, that get us, that listen. So, watch for those kind of things. Are they giving you that feeling? And the final one, and this one's important, and I don't discount it at all. How much do they cost? What is it going to cost you to work with this person? Because you may have found somebody that you think they are perfect. I can't wait to start working with them. And then they tell you their price and you like fall off your chair, right? If you've gone into an attorney's office thinking, yeah, I know that attorneys are expensive. This is going to maybe be like $300 an hour and they quote you $800 an hour, you might be taken aback. Um, so is it in your budget? Can you afford it? Do they have payment plans? Like, how does it work with them? So if they are the absolutely perfect person and everything else jives, they may be worth a little bit more than the other person you talked to whose rates were actually much more reasonable, but who you just didn't feel so good about. So, there again, you're talking about some balancing and whatnot, but the bottom line is it has to be in your budget. You're not going to go into debt business wise to hire an attorney to help you. Those are the 5 things: credentials, convenience, comfort, compassion, cost. When you've got somebody that hits all 5 of those, you have a winner. Sign up.
I have, and I'm sure my listeners have had too. It's going to vary because every attorney does their own work, but maybe you can give yourself an example. The word retainer. So people use that word and normally, just using yourself as an example, because it's what you do. when you're like, yes, I want to hire this attorney? Like, how does that usually work? Because I always hear people, let me call my attorney. Like, it's like, oh, well, they're on call for you, or are you taking new clients? Because again, it's like a doctor. A lot of times you call
So,
a physician's office and they're like, we're not taking new patients. It's like, oh,
right.
then move on. Yeah.
So, retainer, it's an interesting animal, and some attorneys use them and some don't. I'm one that doesn't. But here's the thing. If an attorney is working for you, let's say on a family law matter or a criminal law matter, you're in court, you've been charged with something, they are going to ask for a retainer. They need to get paid up front because there are a lot of expenses involved in those types of legal work. And so they take a chunk of money from you, typically thousands of dollars. And as they do their work, they bill against that chunk of money and start as attorneys, we're required to put retainer money in a very special kind of account called an IOLTA account, which protects it. And we can only take it out as we've actually earned it. So an attorney might take a $10,000 retainer from you, but they don't put it in their pocket. It goes in this separate bank account. And then as they bill you, they pull from it to pay the bill. So basically, the retainer is advanced payment of the bill. And at the end of the engagement, if the attorney hasn't used all of the retainer money, if they haven't earned it all, they have to give whatever's left back. Or if the retainer money is running out, they're going to ask you to replenish the retainer. The other way attorneys work is they bill as work is done. So if you come to me and I agree to work with you on an hourly basis, I'm going to do the work, and at the end of the month I'm going to send you a bill for how many hours I worked, and you're going to send me a payment. The third way is flat rates. And this is the world that I personally live in.
Hmm.
If you come to me and you say, I want to set up a business entity in the state of Pennsylvania, I want to file an LLC, I'm going to quote you a flat rate that includes everything you need to get that business entity set up. It includes all the filing fees, everything. You're going to pay me upfront the full amount. I'm going to do the work. Those are usually very short term engagements because setting up a business entity, that's usually done on my end within a week. So
Yeah.
you paid me, but within the week, I've earned it. So those work with, with the idea of upfront payment, but it's for a specified service for a specified amount. The other thing I do is I have something called the Business Counsel membership. And the membership allows my clients access to me, so when you hear somebody saying, I got to call my attorney, my clients can call me, text me, email me with questions, concerns, things they need reviewed, whatever. And it's a flat monthly fee that I charge them. And their credit card gets auto billed every month, but then they have the access to me. So that's kind of a hybrid on a retainer. It's not $10,000 up front, it's just a small monthly fee, but that guarantees that I'm available to them when they need me.
Thank you for giving those examples because I know terminology gets thrown around and people have ideas of what it means. And that was really clear for people to understand because I teach on budgeting. And so I tell people you in your expense budget, you want to make sure you have your finance people, your legal people, like you need to budget for these things. And then having that budget, and if you don't use it, that's okay, but you have it so that
Right.
it's helpful to know I need a legal budget. And however you want to use that, whether it's signing up for Wise All Academy, if they're somebody that can work with you in the states that you cover, having you set up their business for them, having you do their trademark or having them have you drop a contract, then they have a budget for it. I think that
Right.
gets overlooked a lot of times because it's like an afterthought, like, oh yeah, we need to protect our business. Oh wait, well, how are we going to pay for that? Yeah. So having that up front is so valuable. We could go on and on because I know that you are a wealth of information. I'm going to direct people to get your book, check out Wisel Academy. What are some ways that people can reach out if they'd like to learn more?
So the best way to reach me, honestly, is through my website, which is Cheri Andrews.com. And There is on there, if you wanted to book a consultation with me, there's a button, get right on there and book. There's information on my website about Smooth Sailing, my book, about the Wise Owl Academy with links on how to get into that. So everything you kind of need to know about me, about the services I do, about those two other pieces of my business, it's all on my website. There's also a contact form. So if you're not looking for a consultation, but you have questions for me, there's a contact form that sends me an email. You can, put information in there and I can reach back out to you.
Thank you so much, Cheri, for being here. Thank you for sharing all this valuable information. I know it's going to help so many people that are listening. If you want to reach out to Cheri, you can check out her website. And for all of you out there, as always, keep it simple. Thanks for listening to this episode of Starting a Business Simplified. If you enjoyed this episode, then hit the subscribe or follow button on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. Have you thought about starting a business and didn't know what to do first? You're in the right place. I've created a simplified step-by-step process for starting a business. Click on the link in the show notes for information on how to get started today.